Okay, so Mark here again from Rock and Load. This evening, I am joined by Mr. Mike Ross. Mike has just dropped his new single, The Preacher, coming off his new album, Third Eye Open, which arrives in spring 2023. And Mike has been good enough to join us this evening to tell us all about it. Mike, how are you doing, sir?
Hello there. Yeah, I'm good, man. How are you?
Fantabulous. I'm absolutely fantabulous. It's
Great.
great to catch up with you. It's funny, actually, because I've obviously been doing press for you for a number of years, but we've never had the opportunity to have a chin wag. So it's good to actually lay eyes on you and have a chat.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's good to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure. So we were just briefly discussing. Give us a little bit of a backstory into how you got to where you are today, then your sort of musical journey to date.
Sure, man. Well, I mean, I started playing bands in the 90s. Playing bands in the 90s when I was a kid. Originally as a guitar player. I mean, when I was really young, I had this idea of being a guitar player, singer, but I had a really young voice back
Yeah,
then. So I concentrated on playing guitar at first. Later, my songwriting got, came up with my voice got a bit more gravelly, and so I did end up fronting a band. And then chipped away at that until maybe kind of mid 2000s, and I was ended up working with a band that had a deal with Sony Records, and it was quite a big presentation, but it didn't ever really catch fire. And then I recorded my first solo album 2008 and was all set to put it out in 2009, and then got diverted into the birth of my son Thomas in 2009. So I didn't get back around to being able to focus on music properly till maybe 2014.
yeah. So let's unpack a little bit of what you told me there. Talk to me about who were your sort of earlier musical influences then when you were sort of starting off and aspiring to be a musician?
Well, my dad had great records. My mum had great records. I was listening to Beatles records and Stones records, and Stax soul records when I was a kid. But it was Back in Black, Angus, AC/DC
Yeah,
basically. My dad had that record, and God bless him. He's hanging on the wall in my house, that copy,
yeah.
to this day.
Cherished.
Yeah, very much so. When I heard that, my mum went to school with Brian Johnson. My mum's from Houghton Spring, which is where, or Houghton as they call it,
Yeah.
which is where Brian's from. So there was a bit of a family connection there growing up. But when I started listening to that record, and then I went to like Virgin Records in Durham and bought a big poster of Angus with his SG, had that on the wall, and that was that's when it really took off. But so kind of mixing that, and I heard a lot of the music that I liked in Angus, in AC/DC, the kind of rock and roll thing and the swagger, and I was never really into punk music, but I quite like the rebellion of the
Yeah.
Bon Scott stuff. I'm more of a Bon Scott guy than a Brian Johnson guy. I'm more into the bad boys smoking around the back of the school sheds than Sink the Pink, that
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But and then from there, I got into the Stones definitely, and Faces, and other kind of bad boy swaggery 70s rock bands, and then like maybe 1991, 1992, and I got into the Black Crows, and I was listening to some grunge, like Alice in Chains, although they were
Yeah.
never really grunge. But Pearl Jam, they were never really grunge. But Mother Love Bone was a big band of mine, the precursor to Pearl Jam, and that kind of sort of intelligent post rock, not quite indie, not quite heavy metal.
Yeah.
And then I was writing my own songs really. So from then it all kind of went off.
And you talked about then getting the record deal with Sony with the band. What sort of vibe was that band?
Well, that was a long time later. I mean, I'd been writing this stuff that was a little bit like, it was a three-piece, which is I always like to work in the three-piece, and it was kind of like a little bit Black Crowsy, but a little bit more songwritery and less kind of jammy than the Crow stuff. But when we were in the band that had to deal with Sony, it's what people call Americana now, but they didn't know what to call it then because it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
about 10 years too early. 2006, we made that record in the studio in Devon or Dorset with the guy that had made PJ Harvey records and stuff, and it was a female fronted band called She Said, and and it was like, yeah, country noir, we used to call it. You didn't really know what to call it. And that's
Yeah.
why it never really took. We would play it on the radio, but there was nothing else to compare it to in the UK at that time. You
Yeah.
know, maybe now you'd be comparing it against possibly like Ryan Adams or Drive By Truckers or something like that. But it was a bit ahead of its time, really.
Yeah, I suppose that's something that maybe the digital age has really given birth to, is that people are exposed to every single genre at the touch of a button now, so that you have that opportunity to really envelop yourself in whatever genre, whatever style of music you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the gift of the digital generation. It's also the curse,
Yeah.
because there's no, when I was a kid, we still used to watch every band that played on Top of the Pops on a
Yeah.
Thursday, and it would be Bomb the Bass, or it would be, Fatboy Slim, or it would be the Dogs D'Amour, or Guns N'
Yeah.
Roses, and then Nirvana would be on, and it was very much for me then, as a young person at that time, all that different music kind of made sense contextually because it was part of the society, Whereas everybody's so far down. Well, I mean, I'm so far down the niche, I can't see back out the music that I like. I like to go on these journeys, So it's not a bad thing, but it does make it's changed a lot, obviously.
Yeah, it has. And like, even when I think back to my own youth and the days sort of sitting in the bedroom, posters on the wall, but you would have like spent hours just playing an album over and over again,
Yeah.
flipping it to vinyl album from side to side and examining every single piece of information on the sleeves of the album and stuff like that now. But it's just so disposable now.
Yeah. I mean, God, it would be, I had a paper round on Thursday night to get paid on a Friday morning, go to school, skive off the last lesson, get the bus into Durham, and go and buy a record. And I didn't know. I mean, I'd buy like a Jimi Hendrix record, and I'd just go every week and buy the one that I didn't have. I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And back then, that was a dodgy practice because there was some really crappy Hendrix record. There wasn't that now where it's all being curated and sorted out. There were some really dodgy cut and paste ones, but it was as much about the journey back on the bus, sort of sitting propped up, engrossed in every detail of the cover. Who played the bass on this? Where was it recorded? And what year? Where does it fit in the tapestry? Whereas, I mean, I've listened to five albums today that I hadn't heard by Warren Zevon. That just fell down a little hole, and then been listening to it all day, walking around, walking the dog, doing housework, beamed in, and that would have been like 6 weeks worth of paper round money back in the day.
Yeah. It's really, it's an impossible battle today, isn't it, to really understand what is right, what is wrong. We have this amazing opportunity now to have everything in front of you, but at the same time, your mind's a blank sometimes, wondering what do you want to listen to? It's almost overwhelming as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm pro it from the perspective of that. I actually, lockdown did it for me. Before that, and for years and years and years, I would just listen to the same albums, like I did the same ones I did when I was a kid, right? The Allman Brothers or Stones records or something. But since 2020, actually, something in me when I listen to a record that I've heard before, something's actually like it's almost like slightly revolted. It's like I've just become a sponge for new music, and I do hold back catalogs. Like say Warren Zevon, I just got into, and I listened to the first one from 1976, and then I listened through to 2000 and whatever, and I do the whole back catalog of Government Mule, for example.
Yeah.
So it's great, but it is very different when, like you say, when I had the Jimi Hendrix Smash Hits album. And that was about the only record I liked for about 9 months, and I just learned the songs one at a time. Put that on, put me a couple of blue tack together, some pennies to put on the needle to slow it down, and then like try and figure out what they were doing and play it, and then try and play it at the right speed and change the key. I mean, that's those days have gone.
Yeah. I know. So I think it's an amazing time to be a musician now, because obviously the tools in front of you are just unbelievable. If you want to envelop yourself in that world and be a better musician, but My God, you know, it's yeah. When you think back to the things you had to do to try and compete in the struggle, you know, to be a better musician or whatever.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, you know, and I see, it looks like you're sitting in the studio, and this is where I make a lot of my records, and what I still can't believe how easy it can be to capture something good, because we used to, I mean, it sounds like the old man of the sea now, but you know, we go in the studio, it'd be some crappy old 2-inch tape machine that didn't work properly, and 3 of the channels were out, and it was bleeding on 2 of the others. And there was some grumpy guy chain smoking rollies that wasn't bothered, you know, and it would cost you, like, you'd go pay 500 quid for a weekend in this place, or it would be early digital stuff, which was quite crappy sounding.
Yeah.
But now, if you know what you want to do, the gear, you have no boundaries, you know. But conversely, there are a lot of people who can make really good records through digital manipulation that you wouldn't be able to cut it,
you
know, in a room with a rhythm section.
Yeah. I suppose that's another thing of the birth of the digital age, is that an awful lot of the guys out there are Instagram sort of guitarists who can do all the shreddy stuff and all that, but aren't actually maybe seasoned musicians like an awful lot of the guys who grew up doing what you've done over the years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, whatever you're into it for, and it's not my place to knock it, really. But it does muddy the waters for people, you know, because of the number of the amount of exposure that you have to this stuff daily. It's a bit like emails. You get swamped day and night. It makes it quite difficult to see the ones that are important because of the barrage of junk that you see all the time. And I do see that with, you know, with musicians, but that could probably do better if it was a bit of a clearer field. But then again, you know, it's always been like that. I'm still discovering wonderful records by innovative artists from 1971 that I've never heard.
Yeah.
You know, so there's always been more music than people to listen to, I suppose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very, very true. I actually said that to, I think it was Walter Trout one night when I was interviewing him, and I was just saying to him, like, I discovered Walter really probably when he was close to 70 years of age, you know, knew the name, but never knew his catalog. And it's the beauty and the curse of music is that you could spend your life sort of forging a career, creating this beautiful music and beautiful back catalogue, and there's people out there who'll never hear it. But at the same time, when you're close to 70 years of age, somebody can strike gold on your catalogue and absolutely fall in love with you as a musician. So that's really what it's all about, isn't it? Just want to connect with the people, the right people, I suppose.
100%. Connecting with people is why I came back into it, you know, because around this time when I was breaking and I was trying to work a inverted commas proper job and raise kids and everything, and it was good on some levels because my son's really important to me, but it was miserable in others because I wasn't connecting with people in the way that I'm best at, which is stick a guitar in my hand and a microphone in front of me and let me do it that way, you know. So it is really important. And then this record, you know, the, I don't know, 6-7 records I put out since I came back to it, they're there. Yeah, I mean, I hope people listen to them. Obviously, you know, I need people to listen to them so that the career progression follows, right? You know, you come and see your gigs and buy merch and keep the machine going. But yeah, as a document, you know, and as a monument, you know, and for my son, you know, Thomas and I went the record that I put out in 2016, Jenny's Place, the album that I made that in 2015. And he was like 5, 6, and we like he shared in the writing, recording, and post production of that record because I was doing a lot of it in the car driving him to and from his mum to school.
Yeah,
and we were having conversations, and he learned about rhythm and timing and meter, and now he's a multi-instrumentalist at 13. You know, so the gift of that and perpetuating that's a really wonderful connection, and just having it, as you say, you know, my stuff's all on Spotify and all the rest of it, and when I get my playlist reports, and there's, you know, it's like getting played in Jakarta, and as a, I don't know, unpronounceable former Soviet states, you know, and all over the west coast of America and everything, you know. So it's this digital age, which is easy to malign, is also a remarkable, you know, method of getting your music out there.
Yeah,
perspective on who's seeing it first time around.
Yeah, it is. It's a very, very bizarre thing, and it's strange times. And obviously, especially with the pandemic, musicians and the music industries went through such a really strange time. Obviously, shutting everything down. It almost feels like for a lot of musicians, they were starting back from scratch again to a degree. How have you found that sort of transition back into the norm?
Painful, man, painful. You know, I mean, as I said, I was like back on the road 2015, trying to build up a reputation for myself in a scene that I was completely unknown in after the time I'd spent off, you know. And by 2019 I had a good head of steam, you know, and I made a really you know, I had a series of good releases myself, and then with my band RHR with a couple of other guys, and 2020 was an exciting year, and I just finished a great, well, I think it's a great record, a good record, and I was, you know, I finished that in February, but just after Christmas 2020, and I'm like, this is going to be great. This October, bang, you know.
Yeah.
And I lost everything. I lost all of my touring, and well, we all did. You know, we all lost so much that I don't want to cry like poor me, but I was grateful because we'd moved house the year before, and I had this studio which is in my bottom of my garden. So I had a refuge. I was doing gigs in here, streaming gigs and making records, and you know, just I was really productive. But coming back to it, you know, yeah, it's hard, and I mean, I've got this new record out because of I was let down by an agent who was supposed to be booking a bunch of stuff for me, and then he just walked away just before Christmas because he hadn't done any work. So I've got this record out and this thing, and not a lot of support from side of the, you know, I had a team in place, and a really important member of that team bailed.
Yeah.
So and it's not necessarily like, you know, he's a bad guy. It's just that it's a completely different landscape.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make a living doing it. You know?
Yeah, no, I was talking with Ollie Brown the other night, and I know Ollie because I met him back in 2015 when he came through Ireland, and he stayed with me actually, so we've been good mates since. But like talking to him and the journey like even he's been on, and from the outside everything looks like roses, you know, obviously because you see these guys touring with major musicians and doing releases, but the struggle is so real that it's just, yeah, you wonder how people can hang on, you know, tooth and nail sometimes to come out the other side of it, because it is so tough to try and make ends meet as a working musician, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's impossible to do it alone, you know, unless you are working at a considerably higher level than most people. Again, you know, like I'm not playing the world's smallest violin saying feel sorry for me, I'm a hard-working musician, but you're right, it's true. And you know, like it reminds me when there's a movie Convoy, I think I've seen Convoy, Chris Christopherson, Rubber Duck, you know, and he's gone cool and calm on the surface and paddling like the devil underneath. And part of the digital problem is that everybody's lives are edited so they don't display any of the difficult stuff. And actually I made like with this record, for example, and with the title Third Eye Open and some of the concepts and stuff, is something about me. I'm just trying to take the fourth wall off that a little bit and say, you know what, it sucks, this world that we live in, and it's not right, it's not fair. And a bit like Carol Vorderman. You know what, I can had enough of this, and it's about time I tell you how I really feel about it, because the world doesn't work the way that it should.
Yeah, well, a good friend of mine would say that 2023 was going to be the sort of awakening for a lot of people, you know, coming out the other side of what we all went through. And I think there's a bit of a veil lifted, certainly, on the people that we put trust in, especially within our society, like our governments and stuff like that there, that have massively let us down, who clearly are incompetent and headless chickens. You know, and
well, it's a 40-year plan, isn't it? You know, basically, you know, 45-year plan really, because it started in the late 70s with Thatcher and Reagan, and you know, and they sort of outlawed this. I don't want to say social democrats because that means a thing, but you know, like kind of like responsible left-wing capitalists. Which is it can totally exist. You can have a conscience and still be okay earning money. but this, this kind of populist bullshit, and yeah, we're doing it for your own good, but we're actually, like, let's not get into it, but everybody who had the position to make a bit of money out of the pandemic totally rinsed it. And
Yeah,
Boris and them were right at the top of the pile. We're
yeah,
doing it for your own good, but we're actually just taking 200 million in government contracts and then diverting 130 of it off to all of our friends and family. And
yeah,
yeah, and it sucks, man. And it's I as well as being a musician, I also work in. I'm a therapist. I trained because not because I'm so well. I came crawling about the swamp and went, "Crap, yeah, bloody hell, that was difficult. I wonder if anybody else needs a hand."
yeah,
And I work with people in music education, and because of my training, I went through a lot of training to get qualified, and part of that is to really recognize anxiety
yeah,
and mental health conditions and things. And everybody's just so traumatized, man.
yeah, yeah.
Everybody,
No, it's the truth. It is a truth.
everybody
Yeah,
is so they're so overwhelmed. Everybody's working at 140. Look at it. I mean, I don't
yeah,
know. Here the NHS is just broken, completely broken, and everybody that's in the union is like, we've had enough. Like something's got to change. And they're right. It was, and may hopefully this year is the year. Yeah. So third eye open, that's what that's about. It's
yeah.
about I see you guys. This is my perspective on it. I can see what you're doing, and this enlightenment that I'm experiencing is something that I want to share about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'd say it'll be a welcome message because, as I say, that this year's for everybody. There's just so much information dropping that it's putting the lid off so much crap that's happened over the past couple of years in the way that the general public were abused, on so many levels. And I think the art and creative side of things will always feed through to drive that message home as well. And that's something great, whether it be art through painting or music.
Yeah. Well, for me, it feeds into that thing you were talking about with connection, and that and non-verbal communication has been. I never really knew how important it was to me, but it's literally been my whole life as a journey to try and gain comprehension of other people through this kind of non-verbal communication thing, and up until it's with my Clovis Limit Part 2 album, parts of that is starting to develop this kind of I see you thing. But prior to that, really, I've been content to just kind of offer something which was ambiguous enough to appeal to all kinds of people, because I'm an inclusive guy,
Yeah,
right? Like I believe everybody has the right to be what they want to be, whatever that means, as long as you're compassionate and respect other people's autonomy. That's my whole kind of thing. So the music that I write would be designed to be similarly broad. But actually, I'm now like, actually, MFers, it's not okay. It's not okay to be right wing populist, to tell people to not be woke when you're stealing all of their stuff and blaming them for it.
yeah,
And I've had enough. And
yeah.
and that anger it can't. I can't sit on it any longer. It has to come out.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And it's unhealthy to sit on it as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
it's great to have that sort of creative outlet then in which you can
Yeah.
put it out
Well, I've
there.
been trying to find a way of expressing that without necessarily taking a side, because I want everybody to do the same thing, but it
Yeah,
doesn't work. So here's me putting my things. If you want to call me woke, then stand up and tell me what that means, and then I'll tell you exactly why you're wrong.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so when I read in the press review, it says you're a proud DIY artist, which writes, records, produces, and releases your own stuff. So it's quite a lot to juggle there.
Yeah, it sucks. I would rather have a record label.
Does it make the journey harder then, for example? Because you must do you sit and tinker at things for such a long time, or are you able to sort of say that is done?
Well, I mean, it's good to have a time boundary, so separating the process uh is different. It's different at different times, and when I did the basic work for Third Eye Open is when I started to work on those tracks, was some sessions in March last year. But some of that followed on from sessions the previous March, where I made in the second lockdown, and friends have a studio around there, and I've recorded a bunch of stuff that I had demos I've been working on like crazy on in here in 2020. I did a lot of work, and then I've just been finishing that off. So there's a bit of overlap here from different times, but yeah, it's easy to both procrastinate and tinker endlessly.
Yeah.
But I set myself deadlines. So this record, let me think about it. This record was finished in like June. I'd finished end of June, actually early July, because I was ill. I gave myself I gave myself a bad back from sitting in here tracking guitars for 10 hours a day. And then, but by the time it's mixed and everything's always 6 months from mix to being able to start releasing it,
Yeah.
So from March to June, I actually did about 50 gigs as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a bit of a frenetic period, to be honest. So but it's more, I mean, I joke, but it is the case that the nature of my business is quite small, and it's kind of a direct to fan model, which means that it works on a relatively small number of people contributing,
Yeah.
and I've been really lucky to be able to crowdfund for quite a lot of the expense of this record. I mean, I'm still thousands of pounds out of my own pocket into it. But the DIY aspect is more about, it's about that. It is a necessity. Back, like that record we had with She Said, that deal, which was in 2006, which was a 20 grand, 25 grand development deal, where they basically gave you that, and then we delivered the record, which didn't cost anything like 20 grand to make, thank God. So we got a few quid to keep us going for a little while. And then really based on what you delivered, that would be what they did next. And they did release it, but there was issues and delays, and we kind of lost the boat a little bit. And we sort of walked away from that. They'd put probably 40 grand into the whole thing, with a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
But back then it wasn't so easy to do your own PR. It wasn't so easy to do your own manufacture. There was MySpace. There was no Facebook. There was none of that.
Yeah.
So it was the last vestiges of the old industry, which relied on bricks and mortar and big distribution, and then everything being handled by the label. Well, that had all gone, by 2010, maybe something like that. I don't know. So and that was the transformative thing for me coming back to it in, say, 2015, is that you can do it yourself now. If you just, you can talk directly to these people, and that's kind of where I owe it to. But it'd be lovely if some like magic fairy godmother just beamed down and said, you can stop putting your hand in your own pocket to the tune of many thousands of pounds to release a record, man. And we're gonna help you with the PR strategy, and we're gonna help you with the manufacture. It would be great, but it doesn't really happen. So here I am doing it.
Yeah, I know, and so few people will probably ever experience that as well, and within the industry now, because it's such a niche market now to get through to that sort of level. As you say, it's either you're a TikTok star and they're happy to take a punt at you because you already have X amount of million people following you, but as a hardworking grafting musician, it's quite a different landscape altogether.
Yeah, and also, I mean, age is a factor, man. I mean, if I was like 19 and as ruggedly handsome as I was when I was 19, maybe a different story. But the music that I play is, as you say, it's in a niche. It's the only music that ever made sense to me, and it's the evolution of the kind of music I've been creating since I was 16, really.
Yeah.
And it's a constant refinement, and that's what I have that a lot of other people don't have, is that I know how to make that music in a way that I don't hear many other people doing. But just because of my natural affinity towards it, my time served on it, I've got access to the right equipment and whatever. So I make like a really authentic product.
Yeah. When I was listening to it earlier, I was thinking to myself, like the riffs and stuff like that, they're obviously sort of slightly Zeppelin-ish in their construction, but in more modern flavor, like Nuno Bettencourt, his approach with sort of really sort of almost uncomfortable chord sort of choices, which sort of challenge you as a listener, you know, with the riffage. So
Yeah, I was never into extreme, although Nuno's a great player, man. You know, my influences come from further back than that.
yeah,
Zeppelin, yeah, somewhat. I'm more of a DC fan, AC/DC fan, and the way that I let, or Aerosmith. There's more about this record that reminds me of Aerosmith.
yeah,
Nobody else has said that,
yeah,
but something about the riffs and I mean, I like. I don't know if you, well, Joe Walsh, guitar player Joe Walsh. So
yeah,
he was in the James Gang, and he was in the Eagles. But the James Gang, and he was like an American doing what the what Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page were doing, you know. So he has this kind of funkiness to it, and I really like that. And the brief actually for this record was in my head when I'm tracking it. More often than not, it was to have AC/DC playing Black Sabbath riffs. That was my thing. So
yeah,
that kind of like, you know, the twin or the two intervals of DC guitar, and then the drums are a bit straighter, but then kind of flat five riffs and yeah, there are some odd bars in this record of, you know, like seven. There's a tune in 7/8, and every now and again you get a bar of 6 just to make sure you're listening. And
yeah.
there's other bits which is skip time and stuff that I've been able to evolve into from having made a few records, you know, myself. And it's not always the easiest thing in the world for me to work with musicians that can get that, but
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm able to do so much prep work in here now and then present really good demos to the musicians, it makes the process simpler.
And when you go on the road, then do you have a set sort of collection of guys that you work with for playing live or touring?
Well, I mean, my drummer Darren, who has been on every record that I've made, apart from the first Clovis Limit record, which I recorded in Nashville, so I used local players in America. So Darren's played on everything else since 2015. He would be my preferred drumming partner. You know, I mean, again, the DIY ethos is don't wait for conditions to be perfect.
Yeah,
You deliver based on the conditions. So if the conditions are that I can't afford to take Darren out on the road, then I'll use a local drummer. I did a tour of Spain like last year, you know, and because of a couple of scheduling issues, Darren wasn't able to come. So I was introduced to a drummer down there, and we just took him out with us, you know. And I'm cool with that because he gives us a different result. But this time with Third Eye Open, I'm really hoping that Darren will do these shows because it is an extra level of kind of comprehension required on these songs. It's more of a band record than I maybe made, you know, like
yeah,
I'm comfortable working with pickup musicians, as you might call it, or bringing somebody in at different times. But I'm hoping with this next thing to take Darren and then my on-off but quite long-term bass player Lindsay, she's done loads of gigs with me, and then possibly a second guitar player.
yeah, yeah. It's a different beast then once you get onto the road, isn't it? Obviously trying to translate what you've recorded on the album to a live setting and making sure that the audience get it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and this record isn't. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not going to be without its challenges about how to present this record live, because I mean, it still sounds like me, but it doesn't. But it's an evolution of different. You know, if you listen to the rest of my back catalogue, there's bits of it which sound like bits of Third Eye Open, but as a whole, it's more of a rock, you know, a rock record with that rocks.
Yeah,
Whereas on other records it'd be something a bit, maybe some a bit more laid back and some a bit more rocky, and you know, when I go out on tour and I like to go on a journey, so I'll start with something that's a bit more Americana, and then maybe touch on something that's bluesy and then pick it up into the rock stuff, and then maybe, you know, but whatever else, get to the end. The set for this tour with the Third Eye Open thing is probably not going to be like that. It's probably going to be more of a more traditional rock delivery, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And out of curiosity, for your sort of touring, etc., you're always on the road doing one thing or another. Is there anywhere outside of the UK that you tend to go back to consistently, that you're welcome back every time?
Well, Spain, I've been down. I love to play in Spain, particularly in the northwest, but anywhere really. Not the, I don't get much work on the Costas because it's all handmade
Yeah.
chips and beans and criminals, you know. But Spanish audiences, particularly in the northwest, Galicia, which is where my agent is based, and I've been down there several times with the band and several times solo as well. And then, you know, they're mainland Europe in general, Spain more than any other place that I've been so far. Music's a really important part of the culture.
Yeah.
You know, the social thing, and they respond to my music in a way that that feels really authentic because I think they respect the authenticity in it. And
Yeah.
there's something about that non-verbal thing that I'm going for. Like you don't have to know exactly what the song's about. I think there's other bits that are giving you a direction of it. I get a lot of comments from people in really broken English about I feel you. Hey Mike Ross, I feel you. You know, and I mean I don't know if any other people get that, but it's meaningful to me. So Spain, I've been to Czech Republic a few times. That's cool. I'm going to Holland and Belgium and France and northern Germany in the autumn. That'll be cool. So I mean, you know, I'll go anywhere and play if it's feasible. If I can get in there, if I can get the work and I can get out and back, then I'm in there.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think it's a bit of a sort of what I was going to say, rose-tinted glasses idea, where the Europeans, for example, the Spanish, maybe the Germans and French, whatever, will really appreciate you as an artist because you're a British sort of musician with that sort of romantic nostalgia for Brit bands, where, you know, we over here would maybe look at an American artist come across and maybe pay them more respect than we would someone who's from the next town or across the pond.
Yeah, I think this being from away is good. You know,
Yeah.
from away and you come, then it's good. You know, I have American bands, friends of mine, they love to come to the UK and play in the UK. And I'm like, well, I want to go to America and play. And
Yeah.
they, no, man, don't go to America. It's really bad. You're going to come to England, it's better. And I'm like, and I can't get a gig, you know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm not from away. So there is that. And I think the big thing I mean, there are some really good European bands, right? Loads of great music in Europe. But I think the thing that appeals to Spanish audiences, for example, is that we have a convincing when we're singing songs that they know. They might sing a Stones song. You know, I've heard some hilarious cover versions
Yeah.
of songs
When you're
sung by
abroad.
Spanish people who they just can't get away with the American with the accentuation of English,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
You know, so there's something in that. But yeah, I don't really find I don't know because I'm English and I'm here and I play American music to Spanish people. But it works for me, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And you obviously you're sort of saying the album launch is, it's not too far away at this stage. You've been sitting on it a while. It must be strange as a musician doing these things and having to sit on these things for such a long time before you get the opportunity to actually get it out there and give birth to it.
Well, I mean, it doesn't feel like a sitting on it because you know I'm like, yes, and 2.5 years from conception to delivery, from in terms of like this doing the songwriting and then doing the demos and then going to the studio and then coming back here and doing the tracking. But I'm not just doing that because I'm also touring. So I'm not like, I mean, yes, it does drive me insane the amount of times I have to listen to that record before anybody else can hear it. But at the same time, you know, it's like I put it down and then there's the next part. So when it went away from mixing and didn't come back from mixing, final mixing till November, you know. So the demos, sorry, the rough mixes that I did in June, which all sound like Power Age by AC/DC, you know, because that's how I like to make records, dry and crispy and distorted. And then it comes back and then a producer's done it properly. And
It's
then
all polished.
yeah, it's big, you know, loads of bass end and echo that I don't normally do. So really, I've only been, it's not even really February yet, is it? So it's only been about a couple of months, December and January. But while that's going on, I'm doing the artwork design and then we're doing the cover design and I'm making the videos and then the singles out whenever it was the 18th, just a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
So so I'm like inhabiting the preacher for a bit, and then I'm also trying to make the video for the next one. So there's a feeling of it if it has a trajectory, and then different bits are dropping off at different times, you know. Yeah. But yeah, it would be nice to do things quicker, but you know,
c'est la vie.
C'est la vie, yeah.
Yeah. And so what's the plan? What is the plan for the next couple of months for you then?
Well, next single will be March, probably early March, when the tour dates will go out on sale or be announced. And I'm not going to lie to you, the tour is a sticking point at the moment because of my agent, because the agent bailed, and too late in the day to do a lot. So I'm pulling in some favors, and I'm hoping that the universe is just going to reach down and give me a hand up, and maybe, because I was hoping for some tour supports, and this guy was supposed to have applied for like 80 plus festivals, and he hasn't done anything. Right. So so I'm light on work for the first half of the year. We'll see. Really, I'm not going to lose any more sleep over it. I'm just trying to do what I can. So there'll be gigs between Easter and the end of May, early June. There'll be some festival stuff. I've got some European stuff, and then we're going out to do the longer tour in the fall, as my Dutch agent calls it. So there'll be that, and maybe 2 more singles before the album goes out, and then probably another one to support the European tour. But it's like throw it all at the wall and see what sticks, and hope that parts of the PR campaign allow us to move up. I'm probably blowing the fourth wall off it a bit here. The answer is I don't really know, because I had to change a plan based on somebody letting me down. But I'm not gonna put that on socials.
No, well, all you know is just, like, you just never know what doors can open in the next couple of months. Opportunities can come along, and the whole thing will shift yet again for you. So you just gotta be ready to take those opportunities.
Exactly. I mean, the reality is that I'm a good bet if you want to book me, and if anybody's listening and book me, then I'm a good bet. I turn up. I'm not late. I don't drink anymore. I don't use any drugs anymore. So you always get a consistently good show. You get a good product, and I'm no trouble. So hopefully a bit of that's going to rub off on some touring bands, and might get a couple of legs up. I've got some irons in the fire.
Good. Glad to hear it. Well, look, best of luck with the album launch. I'll keep my ears to the ground and see what's happening with you. And best of luck with it all, man. And here's to a bigger and better 2023.
Thanks, man. Yeah, good to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks again for your time, Mike. Great to see you. Again, Third Eye Open launches at the end of April, so make sure you do check it out. And Mike has a new single, Preacher, on all platforms, so do check it out. And any other socials that people should be checking out, Mike?
Well, Facebook, Mike, / or / whatever it is, the Mike Ross Band. The best way to go is go to my website, which is mikerossmusic.co.uk, and then there's a bunch of buttons that take you everywhere you need to go.
Brilliant job. No problem. Well, good talking to you, man, and we'll talk to you hopefully later down the line, see how you got on.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, take care of yourself. Thanks very much, Mike.
Cheers, bye.